At a naval base in San Diego, a decorated war hero worked invisibly as a janitor, hiding from a past too painful to bear. But one day, an arrogant young lieutenant publicly humiliated him in front of dozens. For a minor inconvenience, the old man knelt silently and cleaned up the mess. What the officer didn't know was that the quiet janitor wore a faded tattoo under his sleeve, a mark from America's most secret war. And what happened next shattered everything. Before we dive in, tell us in comments where in the world you are watching from. Lieutenant Adams was already soaked when he hit the corridor at a dead run. Saltwater still dripped from his uniform, his boots squelched with every step. And somewhere behind him 2 SEAL candidates were being checked for water in their lungs because he'd given the wrong signal during the rescue drill. 5 minutes. That's all he had before the base commander demanded answers he didn't have. He took the corner too fast. The cleaning cart materialized like a wall. Metal crashed against metal. The bucket tipped, and 40 gallons of gray water exploded across the tile, drenching his legs, turning his catastrophic morning into something visible, something everyone would see when he walked into that briefing room, looking like he'd already drowned. The old janitor stepped forward immediately, hands raised. "Sir, I'm sorry. Let me—" "You're always in the way." Adams's voice cracked, too loud, echoing off concrete walls. His chest heaved, his hands shook. "Do you even understand what happens here? Real SEALs are training and you're making messes." Carter, gray-haired, 72-year-old, maintenance uniform hanging loose on his frame, said nothing. He just bent slowly and began soaking up water with a towel, absorbing the lieutenant's rage the same way. Adams shoved past him, boots leaving wet prints toward the briefing room. 2 sailors stood frozen near the stairwell. They looked at each other, looked away. Carter wrung out the towel into the bucket. His hands were scarred, the knuckles thick and misshapen from old breaks. As his sleeve pulled back, blue ink appeared against weathered skin, an eagle, an anchor, a trident, before disappearing again beneath gray fabric. He knelt on that cold floor, water soaking through the knees of his coveralls, and said nothing. He never did any more. There were days, years ago, when David Chen walked through military installations and men snapped to attention. Days when his voice carried the weight of 100 missions, when junior officers hung on his every word, when the trident on his chest meant something the world could see. Master Chief, SEAL Team Commander. A name whispered with respect in briefing rooms from Coronado to Kabul. That man died the day his team did. The transition had been brutal. After 30 years of service, after carrying 6 flag-draped coffins in his mind every waking hour, the silence of civilian life became unbearable. Therapists called it survivor's guilt. David called it what he deserved. He couldn't lead men anymore. Couldn't trust himself with lives when he'd failed the ones that mattered most. So he found work requiring no decisions, no command, no risk, just floors, just routine, just penance. Naval Base San Diego hired him 2 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on him. Now colleagues called him the Ghost. He cleaned conference rooms where officers planned missions, scrubbed gyms where SEALs trained, polished memorials honoring the fallen. "You ever serve?" Martinez once asked, watching David's military precision. "A long time ago?" David stood slowly, wringing out his mop in silence. The hallway emptied. Officers averted their eyes. Lieutenant Brennan's footsteps faded toward the command building, leaving only the smell of floor cleaner and shame. Hours later, those same footsteps returned, heavier now, angrier. Brennan's briefing had gone catastrophically. Captain Torres, the base commander, had torn into him with surgical precision. The training exercise failure, the safety violations, the lack of judgment. "You're on probation, Lieutenant. Desk duty. Safety protocol review." The words landed like a death sentence for an officer who lived for action, for respect, for the spotlight. Brennan left Torres's office feeling his career crumbling, his reputation dissolving. And there, in the same hallway where his day had started, was that same janitor, still cleaning, still methodical, still maddeningly calm. Something about David's steady, unhurried movements felt like mockery. Brennan approached, fists clenched. Junior officers were passing through now. Witnesses. You. Brennan's voice cut through the quiet. Do you have any idea what sacrifice means? What it's like to actually matter? Men like me are out there failing or succeeding in front of everyone, and you're invisible because you've never been anything else. David kept mopping. Didn't look up. You think this is service? Brennan gestured around wildly. Pushing a mop while real warriors bleed? Ensign Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably nearby, mouth opening as if to speak, then closing. Too junior. Too afraid. Brennan stepped closer, voice dropping to something crueler. You want to see what real service looks like? He pointed toward the memorial wall, where photographs of decorated seals hung in careful rows. Those are warriors. You're just here, taking up space. David's hands stopped. His jaw tightened. His breathing changed, shallow, controlled, like a man fighting something deep. Finally, he looked up. His voice was quiet, but underneath it lay something unbreakable. Yes, sir. I know exactly who they are. Brennan heard sarcasm. He laughed, sharp, dismissive. I'm sure you do, old man. He walked away, officers trailing behind him, leaving David alone. David stood in that empty hallway, staring at the memorial wall. His eyes found a photograph from 2009. 8 men in desert camo, faces young and fierce, arms around each other's shoulders. His fingers traced one face, then another, all gone now, all except one. David's hands didn't stop shaking until he was alone. He found an empty corridor near the loading dock, pressed his back against the cold concrete wall, and forced himself to breathe. 4 counts in, hold, 6 counts out. The way the VA therapist had taught him. It wasn't Brennan's words that had cut through. He'd survived worse than insults. It was standing in that hallway beneath those photographs, listening to some kid lecture him about warriors, while the faces of dead brothers stared down from the wall. 3 buildings away, Chief Petty Officer Vincent Ramirez sat in the security office, halfway through a stale sandwich and his afternoon footage review. Routine work. Boring work. Until the hallway confrontation appeared on screen. Lieutenant Brennan was unloading on someone. A janitor. Head down. Silent. Standard officer tantrum. Ramirez was about to fast forward when the janitor knelt to clean spilled water. His sleeve rode up. Ramirez leaned forward. Rewound. Paused. There, on the man's right forearm, a faded tattoo. Skull wearing a green beret. Crossed arrows beneath it. And below that, barely visible but unmistakable, Mac VSOG. Ramirez's sandwich hit the desk. He'd spent 6 years in naval intelligence. He knew what that tattoo meant. Military Assistance Command, Vietnam, Studies and Observations Group. The most classified unit of the Vietnam War. Missions so secret they were still redacted 50 years later. Cross-border operations into Laos and Cambodia. 3-man recon teams dropped into hell with no backup and no acknowledge if captured. They weren't SEALs. They were something else. Something quieter. Something the government still didn't fully admit existed. And one of them had just been humiliated on camera by a lieutenant who'd never heard a shot fired in anger. Ramirez grabbed the phone, hands unsteady. Captain Torres answered on the 4th ring, irritation sharp in his voice. Sir, this is Chief Ramirez in security. I need you to see something immediately. I'm in the middle of... Sir... Ramirez's voice cut through. A member of MAC VSOG was just publicly humiliated in your hallway by Lieutenant Brennan. I have it on footage." The line went dead silent. Then, quietly, "MAC V what?" "Studies and Observations Group, sir. Vietnam. The tattoo is unmistakable. I saw it clearly when he knelt down." Torres's voice changed completely. "Send me that footage, right now. And Chief, not a word to anyone." "Understood, sir." Torres hung up and sat motionless as the video file loaded. He watched once, rewound, watched the moment when the janitor's sleeve pulled back and that tattoo became visible. He paused the frame and enlarged it. His stomach dropped. He'd been briefed on MAC VSOG during his stint at the Pentagon. Off-the-record briefings about operations that technically never happened. Casualty rates over 70% on some missions. Men who went into Laos with nothing but a knife and a radio, hunting NVA supply lines in triple canopy jungle, where one wrong step meant capture, torture, and a death the U.S. would never acknowledge. They didn't give those tattoos to support staff. You earned that ink by surviving missions that shouldn't have been survivable. Torres opened the base personnel system. David Chen, Maintenance Services, contracted through a third-party vendor 2 years ago. Clean background check. No military service listed. But that was the point, wasn't it? Men from that unit often changed their names after the war. Too many people looking for revenge. Too many missions that made enemies who never forgot. Torres picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd been given years ago and told never to use unless absolutely necessary. It rang 7 times before someone answered. No greeting, just breathing. "This is Captain Torres, NAS San Diego. I need information on a potential MACVSOG veteran, authorization code Alpha 7. I'm sending a photograph. Stand by." 5 minutes of silence. Then, "Captain, the individual you've identified is flagged. We can confirm prior service in a classified unit. No additional information can be provided. However," the voice paused. "Be advised that this individual received the Medal of Honor under a classified citation. The details remain sealed." Torres felt his chest tighten. "Understood. Thank you." He hung up and stared at the frozen image on his screen. A Medal of Honor recipient. A ghost from America's most secret war. A man who'd probably killed more enemy soldiers than most infantry companies. Mopping floors. Invisible. Silent. And today, some desk-riding lieutenant had called him worthless. Torres buzzed his assistant. "Find Lieutenant Brennan. Tell him to report to my office in 30 minutes. Full dress uniform. Do not tell him why." "Sir, is everything—" "Just do it." Torres looked again at the paused footage. The older man kneeling in water, absorbing humiliation with the same discipline he'd probably used to survive bamboo cages and triple canopy hellscapes. "Everything," Torres said to himself, "is about to change." David, unaware, pushed his cart down another empty hallway. The tattoo on his arm itched the way it always did when memories got too close. He pulled his sleeve down and kept moving. Some ghosts stay buried. Some don't. The turning point, arrival of truth. Morning came cold and sharp. Lieutenant Marcus Brennan received the summons at 0600. Report to Captain Torres's office, 0800 full dress uniform. He assumed it was about probation. Maybe Torres had reconsidered. Maybe this was his second chance. He arrived confident, rehearsing his defense. The door opened. 4 men stood inside, rigid as statues. Captain Torres, Chief Ramirez. 2 senior officers Brennan didn't recognize. None of them sat. None of them smiled. Torres spoke first, his voice like ice cracking. "Lieutenant, tell me what you know about David Chen." Brennan blinked, confused. The janitor, sir. If this is about yesterday, I was under significant stress after the briefing. I may have been harsh, but..." His name, Torres interrupted, is James Carter. Silence. Torres turned a laptop toward Brennan. A service record filled the screen. Header stamped in red. Classified. Declassified 2019. Master Chief Petty Officer James Ghost Carter, SEAL Team 5. 28 years active service. Brennan's throat went dry. Torres read aloud, each word a hammer blow. Multiple deployments: Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Somalia, and locations that remain classified. Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor device, 3 Purple Hearts. He paused. And the Navy Cross. Brennan felt the floor tilt. The Navy Cross, Torres continued, is awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. Do you know what Master Chief Carter did to earn his? Brennan couldn't speak. Torres read from the citation. Kandahar Province, October 2011. 8-man SEAL team executing hostage rescue, ambushed by enemy force estimated at 40 combatants. 3 teammates wounded, extraction impossible. Master Chief Carter, already wounded twice, established a defensive position and held it alone for 4 hours while his team evacuated casualties. He took a 3rd round through his shoulder, but refused medevac until every man was secure. 2 lives saved by direct action. 17 enemy KIA. The room was a tomb. Chief Ramirez stepped forward, his voice thick. He was my team leader in Ramadi, Lieutenant. He carried me out of a burning building while taking fire. I have a wife and 2 daughters because of him. Torres wasn't finished. After recovery, Carter returned to service for 8 more years, trained the next generation of SEALs, became a legend at Coronado. When injury finally forced retirement, he was offered positions most officers dream of: head trainer at Coronado, consultant at SOCOM, strategic advisor at the Pentagon. He leaned forward. He declined everything. He specifically requested the janitorial position here because he wanted to serve quietly, near the community he loved, without recognition or glory. He chose to be useful in the shadows. Torres pulled up security footage. The hallway. Yesterday. Brennan's voice echoed in the silent room. You're invisible because you've never mattered. You want to see what real service looks like? The recording stopped. No one moved. Torres's voice dropped to something colder than Brennan had ever heard. You told a Navy Cross recipient, a man who has bled more for this nation than you will ever comprehend, that he doesn't understand sacrifice. Brennan tried to speak. His mouth opened. Nothing. You humiliated a living legend, Torres said, in front of his own memorial wall, in front of photographs that include his face. Brennan's legs nearly buckled. Torres delivered the final blow. This Friday, at the SEAL Memorial Ceremony, you will apologize to Master Chief Carter, publicly, in front of the entire base, including every SEAL team currently stationed here. You will look that man in the eye and acknowledge what he is. What you failed to see. Brennan's voice cracked. Sir, I didn't know. Exactly, Lieutenant. Torres's eyes burned. You didn't know, and you didn't care to. Dismissed. Brennan stumbled from the office, the world spinning, shame burning through him like shrapnel. Behind him, through the closing door, he heard Ramirez speak quietly. Does the Master Chief know we found him? Torres sighed. Not yet, but he will. 3 days felt like 3 years. Lieutenant Marcus Brennan couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and every time he shut his eyes, he saw David Carter kneeling in that spilled water, calm and dignified, while Brennan's own cruel words echoed back at him. In 72 hours, he'd learned more than 4 years at the academy ever taught him. Carter hadn't taken a janitor's job because he lacked options. He'd requested it. He chose quiet. He chose invisibility. And Brennan had ripped that choice out of his hands just to soothe his own wounded pride. By Friday morning, Brennan was shaking as he stood outside the maintenance closet. He knocked. Carter was already dressed, a neatly pressed uniform hanging beside him, rows of ribbons glowing softly in the dim light. The trident gleamed. It had been there all along. "Master Chief, I came to apologize," Brennan whispered. Carter nodded gently. "Go ahead, son." Brennan forced the truth out. The humiliation he felt in Torres's briefing. The desperate need to feel superior to someone. The shame that now crushed him. Carter listened quietly, then touched the ribbons on his uniform. He spoke of losing his entire team, of the weight he carried, of how invisibility made it bearable. But hiding, he said, wasn't healing. And leadership meant failing publicly and showing up anyway. 2 hours later, the parade ground was filled. Captain Torres read Carter's record, each citation thunderous. When Brennan stepped forward to present the plaque, he abandoned the script. His voice shook as he admitted his arrogance, his insecurity, and the grace Carter had shown him. The field fell silent. Carter accepted the plaque, saluted the sailors, and said softly, "The honor was mine." Weeks passed. Carter moved into the training wing, guiding young SEALs with quiet wisdom. Brennan changed too, humbler, steadier, visiting Carter often, learning not tactics but character. They walked the base together one afternoon, the decorated SEAL and the chastened officer, silent but at peace. Real heroes don't need recognition. They serve in shadows, carrying memories too heavy for most to imagine, and sometimes the person you overlook is the one who once protected your freedom to overlook.